Welcome back to the channel and happy morning to you all. Today we've got a fun video because we have fresh, high resolution photos. They're government photos. They're not high resolution. They're higher resolution than the photos that the government originally took after the incident. But everything has to be viewed from the lens of relativity when you're talking about involving the government. But fresh photos of the weapon that Sideshow Bob tried to use to assassinate Donald Trump in the second assassination attempt, or the third, or the fourth, depending on how you count these various things. That said, in order to cope with the fact that the left side of the aisle seems hell-bent on political violence, pretty par for the course for like forever, you know, the whole 20th century, you know, wasn't any indicator, but in America, to cope with this, we're going to do the only thing logical, befitting of this channel, and that is to ridicule this dude mercilessly for his setup. That and more after we hear a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by 1st Phorm. 1st Phorm is a pro-American, pro-freedom supplement company, and they have something really cool going on that illustrates this. They have a huge giveaway going on in collaboration with Vortex Optics. We're talking about over $8,000 in prizes, everything from vouchers from Vortex to supplements to a range day, round trip travel, a whole bunch of cool stuff. If you want more information on that, then you can use my link listed in the link tree or on the affiliates page. Send yourself over there, get entered to win. And special thanks to 1st Phorm for making today's video possible. This closes on the 26th of September, so get on this if you're interested. First of all, I must gloat because within minutes of the photos being made public from the scene, the chain link fence photo with the rifle leaning up against it, I came out and said that that is not an AK-47. That is indeed an SKS. And all the know-nothings for the last week or so, it was an AK-style rifle. It is not related to the AK in any way, shape, or form. It is a completely different designer by the name of Simonoff. The AK was designed by a guy named Kalashnikov. Same country, but that's about it. I can see why some people that have, no neurosynapses could identify this as an AK because, it's got a curved magazine, and the curve of the magazine is dictated by the cartridge that it is firing. It has to do with the taper of the cartridge. So it does not matter what firearm you put it in. If there is a capacity over a certain level, the curve will have to be the same because it has to do with the stacking of the cartridges. And as those tolerances continue to stack, as you add more and more rounds, they start to form this curve. And that is indicative of something that is 7.62 by 39. So for instance, if you were to look at like an AK-74 that is similar in construction to an AK-47, you'll notice that the AK-74 magazines have a shallower curve than the AK-47 that has a huge curve, and that is because the taper on the cartridges is simply shallower, and as you stack those cartridges in the magazine, they do not form quite as much of a curve. So that geometry of the magazine is only indicative of the cartridge being used, not the weapon being used. Anyhoozle, here's the photo from the FBI. Quite obviously, this is an SKS, not an AK-47. And we can actually narrow it down a little bit more than that. I believe that this is a Chinese Type 56. Now, again, this could be a little bit confusing for folks because the Chinese are historically very uncreative in naming their weapons, because there is both a Chinese Type 56 AK and a Chinese Type 56 SKS. So there are some indicators that tell me that this is a Chinese Type 56. The first one is the way the gas block is constructed, and then the second one is the folding bayonet lug that you can see here at the front is also very indicative of the spur or star-shaped bayonet that folds on the front. Obviously, the bayonet has been removed on this one. So in my opinion, this is a Chinese Type 56 that some fudtard somewhere has gotten a hold of. And because we're making fun of this douchebag that tried to do a horrible thing. We're just going to assume that he did this stuff to it because at a minimum, he at least looked at it and said, yep, looks okay to me. So the first thing I would point out is just like a lot of people out there going like, oh, well, it was an AK-47. Yeah, look at the Call magazine. Oh, AK-47, AK-47, weapon of war. That doesn't belong on our street. Blah, 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 blah. The whole reason the Second Amendment was included in the Bill of Rights was to ensure the right of the citizen to weapons of war, of which the SKS is. But there are a lot of people out there saying that this has been placed into a Monte Carlo stock, and that's not a Monte Carlo stock. A Monte Carlo stock, by definition, is a stock that has a raised culm on it that allows you to get higher up on your optics so that you're not doing like a chin weld or something like that. That is not a Monte Carlo stock. That is a polymer sporterized stock. Popular thing to do, particularly like the 1980s. My father still has a sporterized SKS, and you best believe that I'm going to be snatching that one up later. But there are some other very questionable things about this rifle, but before I do that, let's go back to the magazine. SKS is, as you can see in the quote-unquote original photo of a Chinese Type 56, has a 10-round internal box magazine that is designed to be fed with stripper clips from the top. There's actually a notch in the bolt carrier group that accommodates the insertion. And then on the bottom, there's this little flippy gizmo that you basically pull the lever and the whole guts blow at the bottom because it's under spring tension, and that allows you to mass unload the thing if you want to. But it's pretty easy to remove that thing and use the after factory magazines that have this big claw on it, and you basically just pull the single point out and then you're off to the races. And this was pretty popular to do for people who sporterize their guns because a lot of them are going to add a scope to the top of it, so you no longer have the ability to use those stripper clips to load the gun, and you have to like do this weird thing where you got to fish your fingers in underneath of the optics to be able to do it, and you got to have the bolt open, and it's just like very precarious for your fingers. So using the magazines was a very popular thing to do. I don't know which magazine that is. It looks like a Pro Mag to me, but you know, I'm not an SKS magazine expert. There's some good ones, there's some meh ones, and generally speaking, it looks like this one's a cheap one. That brings us up to some of the other rather janky stuff that you should basically never do to an SKS. Again, it was popular in the 80s before people knew anything about firearms, basically. It was popular to add scopes to the tops of SKSs. SKSs are not designed to have scopes added to the top of them. You look at the receiver of the original configuration of a Type 56, it's not designed to add optics. There was a part designed, or excuse me, is a part that is still designed to add scope mount base to that whole thing. It's just got some raised points that allow you to clip some scope rings to, and they're absolutely terrible. So it is one of the few rifles in the world that is less accurate when you add optics to it than if you were to just use it in its original configuration. And obviously, doofball Dickwad here didn't know that. So an SKS using and the ammunition recovered was looks like trash tier ammunition as well, is shooting somewhere around 3 to 4 minutes of angle out the box without any additions to it. If you add the scope to it, that scope base has got some wobble to it. It flexes when the rifle is fired, and also the SKS ejects straight up, and when it ejects, it's launching them like 20 feet in the air, if not more in some cases, and that has a deleterious effect on your optics. In fact, they made, and they very well may still make, optics specifically for this that have a rubberized sheath on them to kind of mitigate that impact, because if you're doing that over and over and over and over again, you're going to trash your scope. So as far as the scope is concerned, it looks to me like he put some variable power optics on the front of them. Again, probably some NC Star type crap on there that can't hold up to 7.62 by 39 recoil to begin with, let alone some impacts from the cartridges. And you can see that he's tried to mitigate this by wrapping it in electrical tape, but he's also got the bolt carrier group wrapped in electrical tape in some areas. I'm not sure why that is, but he's also got some hose clamps, it appears to me, rubber hose clamps, put in place to help secure those that wobble of those scope rings. And that is not going to help, because it's not actually the rings that are moving. It's not actually the scope that is moving. The two things that are happening is as the gun is fired, the receiver itself is changing formation and configuration as it wobbles. It isn't returning back to the same spot every time as it heats up and moves around. And your scope is getting smacked around consistently by the cartridges that are coming out. So when you put a scope like this on your gun, you're good for at least another minute, if not 2. So you're talking about a 5 to 6 minute gun, easy, when you do stupid crap like this to it. It's been thoroughly demonstrated at this point in time across the internet that this dude had lobotomy level intelligence, and there are plenty of exhibits of that. But the thing that I would like to leave you with as far as the weapons analysis is concerned is this thing back here at the back it seems like a lot of people are questioning what that is for. After you do a bunch of brain dead crap to your rifle like this, you'll notice that there is not a whole lot of room for your face at the back. And what he has done is added some kind of bit over the rear objective, because if you're a soy boy like this and you can't handle the light 7.62 by 39 recoil, then that scope comes back and beans you in the face. And if you've got a cheapy scope like that, oftentimes the metal is pretty thin on that rear objective, and it can cut you wide open, even with a light rifle like 7.62 by 39. And then in closing, I want to talk about the serial number thing for a second, because given that he has a room temperature IQ, I very seriously doubt that he took into consideration that those serial numbers on SKSs are roll stamped. And just to quickly kind of go through this, the way things happen when they're roll stamped is hydraulic pressure is put on a typeset that is then rolled over the item. And that, I want you to think of the metal of the receiver being crushed. And what happens is some of that material is going to move out, and that's where you get the raised ridges of the serial number. But then the rest of the metal is going to be compressed. And I want you to think about the column of metal that is in the typeset. So if you've got like a W, I want you to think about a column of metal in the shape of a W that's being compressed down into the substrate. And when you do that, there are some advanced techniques that, even if you've done some Dremel work on it, can recover that serial number, because there's going to be a differential enough in the surrounding metal that they can be recovered. And the other thing that I would like to point out is that there are, at least to my knowledge, 4 locations on a Chinese Type 56 where you can recover the serial number. One of them is on the stock. Now, obviously, this rifle doesn't have the original stock on it, so maybe if they search his home and stuff like that, they find that, they would be able to recover the serial number from that. The bolt has the serial number, and then the trigger guard has the serial number in addition to the receiver. So we see a lot of pictures from the receiver, but I haven't seen any photos of the other stuff. So there's probably a pretty good shot that one of those pieces they will be able to recover a serial number for. But that's all for determining the lineage of the rifle. You know, is this something that he scored away a long time ago? Is this something that he bought off somebody off of the street? Where did it come from? How did he get it? Because he was a multiple felon. So the questions, obviously, about the The gun control ramifications obviously bring into question the current existing laws and whether or not they work yet again. But the other thing that I would point out is for him to have completely destroyed all evidence of serial numbers on an SKS like that, he would probably have rendered the weapon unusable to a point if that was something that he did completely. The idea that that is unrecoverable is just fantasy. Although, if the internet sensation about that FBI sticker that's on the receiver is true, I'll let you guys discuss that in the comment section down below. That's all I got for you guys today, and hopefully we'll see another one here at the VSO Gun Channel.